Polipede works here. What if I told you there are two types of devilfruit awakening when it came to the Zoan fruit class? Well, today we'll be going over just that. So, I would recommend, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe this video. And to make sure you're not spoiled, I would recommend also that you at least read up to Egghead. Or if you don't care about spoilers, at least read chapter 1069 because that's going to be the crutch of what's going to be going on today. With that being said, let's get into it. So before we start talking about Zoan Awakenings, let's get a little bit of a rundown about what Zoans are. So in chapter 1069, it is explained that not just Zoans, but all devil fruits are the manifestation of people's wishes, their hopes, their dreams, their would it be cool if I was this, or wouldn't it be cool if I was that? And those wishes and dreams manifest themselves into entities that for some reason occupy fruits, right? The most powerful manifestation, I think, is those of the Zoan class, because when this wish, this manifestation is brought into existence, it is the actual being made flesh, in a sense. You are wishing a being into existence. With that being said, I think that plays a key role into awakenings and just the nature of a Zoan in general. So when a person eats a Zoan fruit, of course, they have access to essentially three transformations. They have their normal state, a hybrid state, and then the full animal transformation. This is altered somewhat if the being who eats the fruit is similar to the being within the fruit. So let's say in Luffy's case, Luffy is a human who ate a human fruit. Therefore, he is essentially stuck in a hybrid state until he eventually awakens. I think this is also the case for Sengoku and Stronger, the horse belonging to Q, who recently ate the horse fruit model Pegasus. So I think especially with mythical Zoans, there is a point in which they reach a point of mastery. This mastery is then symbolized by a cloak of aura of some sort. You see this with Yamato in both her full beast and hybrid transformations. She has this sort of cloak of wispy, cool air around her. You also see this in all of Luffy's Gear 4 states. What I think happens when a person is sort of close to mastery or close to awakening is when the wavelengths of the person and the being within the fruit match. The idea of wavelengths is brought up by Chomper way back in Drum when the idea of the Zoan fruit class is first presented. So he explains that his rumble ball allows him to alter the wavelength of his transformations. Therefore, he can create sort of stop gaps and basically make his body up as he wishes. So that's why he has all the different points. Essentially, this is cheating, and we'll get more into that later. However, I think when a mythical Zoan especially is close to being fully synced with the wavelength of the being within the fruit, they gain this sort of wispy cloak, and that represents their mastery. You see this with Yamato because if Yamato's fruit, the spirit within the fruit, the essence within the fruit, is essentially the guardian of Wano, she herself embodies those traits as she wants to protect Wano from her father, for example. I think with her character, she probably is missing something that keeps her from full mastery, but perhaps we'll see that some point in the future. Another requirement I think that is needed for actual full awakening is to be at the point that Yamato and Luffy were, and then experience a near-death experience while trying to do the thing that you and the essence within the fruit agree upon. So living a life's perfect, for example, Luffy's whole deal throughout his journey, he doesn't want to be seen as a hero. He fights in a silly way and he brings the smiles back to countries who have lost them, right? In his fight with Kaido during Onigashima, he meets a near-death experience while trying to do just that, while having a near mastery of his devilfruit, which is why when he enters Gear 4th, you see the sort of wisp clouds around him, because that potentially is a sign of being close to mastery, at least I think for mythical Zoans. So, moving on. Let's move on to the awakened states. I think there are two, a false and a true one. The false one, I think we've had many examples of. One of the most prominent ones are the demon guards of Impel Down, but I think they are one of two categories of this false awakened state. The other is when the user is in control of this giant invincible body. Examples of this would include Chomper in the post-time skip and Sengoku. Yes, Sengoku. So, when we see a user in a false awakening state, for example with the demon guards and with pre-time skip Chomper, the beast that is within the fruit, the essence of the fruit, so your cow, your zebra, your chihuahua, they are all driving the ship. They are in control of the user's body. They have put the user to sleep and they are fully awakened. They are awake, they're in the driver's seat. The reason I think there is a difference between, say, pre-time skip Chomper and the demon guards is that, first of all, pre-time skip Chomper activated this under the conditions of the Rumble Ball. That's why it was so easily dispelled when he was knocked into the water. Furthermore, Chomper ate a human fruit. A human is way less easy to tame than a beast, because I surmise that all the demon guards, based on just their designs, their various animals with human traits, they were all humans who were then forcibly awakened into these sort of hybrid animals. And being animal minded, because that's all that's left is the animal within the fruit. The user no longer is in control. They can be tamed, because of course they can. They're animals. They will appeal to a higher authority because they don't know any better. They're simply beasts. There's no consciousness there. There's only direction and execution. Whereas with Chomper essentially, when in a state of his fruit being in the driver's seat of him, is that he is a caveman, essentially. He is a Neanderthal. Also, he doesn't discern between friend or foe. Now, with post-time skip Chomper and Sengoku, they share a lot of similarities, and Sengoku shares a lot of similarities with Luffy. Like Sengoku, Luffy, when he awakens, has not only a change to his hair, but a change to his clothing. His devilfruit affects his clothing. This happens when Sengoku, his clothing becomes gold, as does his hair, as does his glasses. The reason why I think this sort of transformation happens is that the user and the fruit are close in sync with one another, but there is a bigger gap in the ideals of the person and the being within the fruit. So in order for a more synchronistic existence between the two to happen, both need to share the same ideals and the same goals. With Sengoku is someone who is a very tactful, or at least was a very tactful leader and a very responsible leader. However, he was doing these things under the wrong pretense. He's doing these things in favor of the interests of the world government. He is a lapdog. He's not doing it for the betterment of people as a whole. He's not upholding ideals of the Buddha, because that's what his fruit is essentially is. Even though you could say that it's the statue of the Buddha and not the Buddha himself, it's still symbolic of the Buddha, because the statue is a representation of the ideals taught by the Buddha. With Chomper, I think the reason why you see such a increase in his transformations and his sort of confidence in his abilities is because he is essentially learning a human experience. During the time skip, he studied in a library, so he's bettering himself through study, and then he better relations between human and beast while on that island with the giant birds. Therefore, he's doing the purpose of what his fruit would desire him to do, or what his fruit's purpose is. Because I think what living a human experience is, in terms of One Piece, is making the lives of those around you better and being a sort of voice of reason in a situation where there is any, and perhaps being a good shepherd to the beasts that you inhabit the world with, the other life forms that you inhabit the world with. So that's why he got such a buff from the time skip. It wasn't just learning about new medicines within that library. It was also bettering the relationship between man and beast on that island, which in turn helped him better himself, which is why too he adopts the form of the people on that island when he establishes or makes up Kung Fu Point. So moving forward with that, I think the reason why he becomes a person who can now drive this sort of bestial, false awakened body when he does become Monster Point, he doesn't turn into a raging monster, is because the wavelengths of him and then the human essence within him are more in sync than they were back in the pre-time skip and even before he joined the crew. Because as you remember, Monster Chomper, when he first discovered it, went on a rampage across Drum. So that's why I think he's better off now, currently in the story, than he was back then in the pre-time skip and before he joined the crew. Alright, now let's go over what a perfect awakening is, or what I surmise a perfect awakening is. I think a perfect awakening is achieved when the user and the being within the fruit are in perfect harmony with one another. So when a Zoan user is in perfect sync with whatever is within their fruit, the being that's now residing within them, once those two are in perfect sync and the user experiences a near-death experience, the Zoan entity, the spirit within the fruit, brings them back to life, and the user goes through a state of rebirth, coming back stronger and better than they were before. That is why also in chapter 1069, I think Rob Lucci is able to pull off Six King Gun so casually, whereas in the pre-time skip, it seemed to be a very strenuous thing and a last-ditch effort for him to pull off. In terms of Rob Lucci being our first normal Zoan to have awakened, I think the reason why he too has this sort of veil or shroud of mastery in the form of these black swirls is to show that he, unlike the Demon Guards or pre-time skip Chomper, has become fully in sync with the leopard entity that resides within his cat fruit model leopard, which makes a lot of sense for Rob Lucci if you think about a predatory cat, a being of the jungle who kills for a reason, who kills for purpose, which is sort of Rob Lucci's whole mode of operations. He is an assassin. He kills for purpose. He has designated targets, which is why I think he was able to accomplish the feat of awakening, because he, as he was in the pre-time skip, was already on his way. But like I said, the reason why I don't think he had the wisps or the shroud of mastery back then, because he wasn't a mythical Zoan, he was a normal Zoan. And I think that sort of early shroud of mastery is only, for some reason, exclusive to mythical Zoans, because so far we've only seen mythical Zoans in that state of mastery have that close. So the reason too why this is so impressive, because from Rob Lucci's showings during Enies Lobby, one could surmise that Rob Lucci was a martial artist first and a devilfruit user second. Therefore, I think the time skip had a profound effect on him, or perhaps fighting Luffy had a profound effect on him, and that is what made him want to invest in his devilfruit, because In so many words, he saw the devil fruit as a means to an end to make his martial arts skills more deadly. So I think his mode of thinking changed after fighting Luffy. Therefore, he invested more time in mastering his fruit. But I think he found that he was closer than he thought because just his way of life provided him with an already pretty much complete linkage of wavelength to the leopard entity within his devil fruit. So I don't know what exactly was his near-death experience, but I'm pretty sure he had one. It could have been just being defeated by Luffy. It could have been that, but I think he most likely had another along the way in his rising through the ranks of becoming a CP0 agent. It could be what gave him that medal that we see him have post-leveling, because during the leveling, he just wears a purple corsage on his lapel. He doesn't have the medal of accomplishment yet. So that instance that gave him that medal could be where he had his near-death experience and caused his awakening to trigger. Shout out to Eli DZ, because our talk in Blump's live stream made me think about this or come back to this thought. So I'll leave a link to his channel as well as the live stream in the description below. And there should be a link somewhere on this video at this part. So thanks again, Eli. Let's continue. Okay, so let's talk about the elephant in the room. Kaido, right? Kaido, as a devil fruit user, is no better than Chomper was in the pre-time skip. Why do I say that? Because in the post-time skip, all those transformations that Chomper has that were originally locked behind a rumble ball, except for Monster Point, all of those are accessible to him at any time. Kaido, like Chomper in the pre-time skip, still needs a supplement in order to alter the wavelengths of his fruit. Therefore, in terms of devil fruit mastery, he is the most accomplished failure in the One Piece world thus far. Because even if you want to say like characters such as Marco, if you want to say his sort of harpy state is similar to where Chomper was with manipulating his wavelength, if you want to say that's not like a traditional hybrid form, Marco is still more adept at using his fruit than Kaido. Also, if you want to talk about, say, the nature of the fruit paralleling with the nature of the individual, Kaido will never succeed. And this is why. If we are to believe that devil fruits are brought into the world via the wishes and desires of people, his devil fruit, Kaido's devil fruit, is the embodiment of the legend of a carp jumping over a great height in order to become a dragon. His entire fruit's purpose dictates that in order to become good at using said fruit, the user has to succeed and overcome all challenges. What is Kaido's introduction to us as the audience? Him falling from a great height. And then the rest of the time, he wishes to die an honorable death like Whitebeard. He doesn't wish to succeed. He might have had that logic when he was younger. In fact, we'd see that. But after the fact of, I guess, not finding anyone to challenge him, he got settled in his ways and just embraced the melancholy that was his life, which is why he just didn't grow in any way, shape, or form. He remained the same. I will say the base abilities that he has are quite adept because he can use them all expertly. However, what we see from Momo later on in the Wano arc, once he becomes an adult, these feats don't seem as glamorous because Momo's experience rate is extraordinarily high. And I think the reason why it's extraordinarily high because all throughout this entire Kaido saga, Momo has strived to become better. Momo always wanted the opportunity to become better. He wanted to soar. He wanted to be that carp that jumps over a great height and becomes the dragon. That's why even when he fails, he still succeeds, because the will to actually overcome all obstacles is still there, which is why, too, I would add that I think in order for Momo to continue to succeed and flourish, Yamato would most likely need to either leave Wano and join the crew, or just leave Wano altogether and pursue something or other, which would also help her develop as a character, because she has a character flaw as well that I do think is holding her back from actually awakening. But that's a story for another day. In short, Kaido was bad because he actively acts against the nature of his fruit, and Momo is better than Kaido, or presumably will be better than Kaido if the same rules apply to him. But based on what we learned in Egghead, that seems to be the case, despite his unusual nature of his devilfruit. It seems to be that his devilfruit still contains the entity, so it stands to reason that perhaps even in a shorter amount of time, based on him wanting to be the best he can be and do the best for his country, he will overshadow Kaido and actually awaken his devilfruit. To summarize, I think a perfect awakening is when the entity within the fruit and the user are in perfect synchronicity, meaning their goals and ideals match up perfectly, and the entity within the fruit saves the user after a near-death experience, causing the user to be reborn better and stronger than they were before, with a new use of their abilities, making anything done previously child's play. When the user is close to being awakened, but there is some sort of block or loss of connection in wavelength between the user and the entity in the fruit, you get what is called a false awakening, in which the user is completely aware of their actions and has a very, very, very powerful body, but is still not fully developed as a devilfruit user. You see this in Sengoku when he becomes his giant Buddha self, and you see this with Chomper in the post-time skip. The last and most disheartening version of this is when a devilfruit user is forcibly awakened and they become a monster, essentially, an ogre. You see this with the demon guards, most likely, maybe via Vegapunk or some other means, were forced to awaken and are now simply mindless beasts with the animal essences within their fruits controlling their bodies and actions. With Chomper, he, using the Rumble Balls, gained a transformation of Monster Point. However, due to his inexperience and lack of growth, he fell victim to the monster of humanity that lie within his fruits, thus turning him into a Neanderthal with no regard for life, knowing only destruction and chaos. And with that, that's all I have for you today. Thank you for watching. If you like stuff like this, please feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Polipede Works. And if you like what you see, I would appreciate your subscription. Thank you so much. See you next time.